Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. It's the football review show. We're going to be reviewing all the weekend's football action. We're going to be looking at both semi-finals from the All-Ireland Club Football Championship. Waddy Graham's Glen, obviously with a big win over Kilmacud Crokes. Kilmacud Crokes' run of trying to get to 3 All-Ireland finals in a row and win back-to-back All-Irelands comes to an end as they lose out in the fog to Waddy Graham's Glen. We also had the big victory as well for St. Brigids, who got over the line versus Castlehaven. We'll be touching a little bit on some of the pre-season action that happened at the weekend as well. Some big results in there. London beating Mayo. I think it was a result that definitely surprised a lot of people in more ways than one, as well as some other pre-season games up and down the country. So let us know in the comments down below, I suppose, where or what games you watched at the weekend. Did you watch any pre-season games? Did you watch any of the semi-finals? Obviously, very hard to watch a lot of the games with the fog and everything else. So it was very hard to actually make out what was going on at the best of times, to be honest. But there we go. Shout out to Dublin is great in the chat who says hi. Denise is also here as well. So big up to both of yous. Matthew, first of all, how's life for yourself? Keeping well? You were at the Castlehaven game yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for me on again, Aaron. Yeah, at the Castlehaven game yesterday. At a few Castlehaven games now since they won the Cork Championship. The only game I didn't go to was the Rathcormac game because I had another game within the county. So probably got adopted as being a Castlehaven fan this club championship, but unfortunately it did end in tears really with that semi-final defeat to Brigids. But Brigids were the much better team on the day. No complaints about that. But there was a bit of hope in that third quarter that Castlehaven would turn them over. But Brigids were just the most dominant team in the first half. They were absolutely outstanding. Even they weren't influenced as much as they often were with Ben O'Carroll on the team. Like other players stepped up, the likes of Bobby Nugent, Brian Durbin, Brian Stack all stepped up to the plate, and they didn't do so against Corvin, and they did so against Castlehaven. It was a brilliant win for Brigids. And the other game, a lot of incidents. Obviously, Glen, they were brilliant in the first half, died a bit in the second half. Kilmacud get them goals. There was confusion in the commentary box. Brian Tyre was getting the names wrong, but why? Like, of course you get the names wrong because you couldn't see what was going on. Like, I couldn't even see what was going on in the highlights. Like, even the second goal the Kilmacud scored through Shane Walsh, I think it was a shock to the people in the ground and the people watching on the TV and the people in the commentary box that actually flew into the back of the net. So, yeah, it was just a surreal kind of a game. Like, even I was listening to Off the Ball this morning. Aisling O'Reilly was there for that channel, and she was saying that she was actually amazed coming into the ground that no journalist or anybody within the Park Esler grounds were saying anything about the game being called off. They were all going, go steam ahead. This game is going ahead by hook or by crook. And that was kind of a surprise when you think about it. I know it was the most probably hotly anticipated game of the weekend, and why wouldn't it be with the drama that happened last January? But the fact that it wasn't thought of being postponed at any stage, even at the start of the game at 3 o'clock, I think she arrived at, or something, or 2 o'clock, I think it was, and the game wasn't even thought of being postponed. I thought that was really, really, really surprising in its own right. But the game went ahead. Glen won it, and to be honest, Glen are the favourites for the All Ireland now. And what I will say are, I don't get usually a lot of predictions correct, but I did say in August that Waddy Graham's Glen will win the All Ireland, and I think they're on the right road to doing so.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, I was a bit like you as well. I was surprised, to be honest, that there wasn't, like, especially because when you looked at the Toronto Donegal game on Ulster GA TV, and you looked at some other preseason games up and down the country, obviously Newry's not far, from where those games were taking place. So we were thinking it was a little bit strange that there wasn't much chatter about it. And look, nobody wanted the game to be cancelled. We obviously want to watch the game and everything else, but at the same time, in some ways, did the fog ruin the spectacle? Maybe not, because it was still actually quite an entertaining game, in fairness. And maybe the fog led it to be more of an entertaining game because, it's actually very hard for everyone to actually see what was going on, players and everything else. There was probably a lot of off-the-ball incidents maybe that we couldn't see and that the referees and umpires couldn't see as well. But yeah, like, I mean, do you think it was the right decision in the end for the game to go ahead and in those conditions? Like, we were chatting off air there, and we were saying that probably one of the main reasons why they didn't call it halfway through was because Glen had a big lead, and if the referee had called it, like, there would have been uproar. And you can understand it, to be fair, from a Glen perspective, like 5 points up at half time against the All-Ireland champion, 7 points up, a couple of minutes into the second half. And I know Crokes pulled it back in the end. Glen obviously went on to win, but Crokes did get back level at one stage. But yeah, were you surprised that the game did go ahead even in those conditions?
I was surprised even looking at the photos online of the screenshots of TG4. I think you provided your own one on Twitter yesterday. And I was surprised even looking at it. Obviously, I didn't watch the match. No, I was coming home on the way home for the Castlehaven Brigids game. But even I was looking at the photos online, I was thinking, how on earth are people going to see what's going on here? But even hearing how it unfolded on the radio, Marty Morrissey and Peter Canavan were in commentary, and even in the I don't know, did anybody notice, but on RT radio, the line kept cutting. I think it cut twice or three times in first half alone. So there wasn't just the fog issue, there was an electronic issue in Park Esther as well. So that was incredible in its own right. But Glen were 5 points up, deservedly so. They absolutely blitzed Kilmacud in that first half, especially at the end of it. Conor Glass was outstanding. Emmett Bradley in midfield, Danny Talon, they were up for it. They were up for the fight. And the fact that the game, if it was going to be called off at halftime, I think it would have been harsh on Watty Graham's Glen, first of all, because they deserved it. They played absolutely outstanding. They had Kilmacud down to a T. And they went in halftime roaring hot favourites. And I think if the game was to be called off, then there was going to be a lot of uproar, as I said. And at the same time, Kilmacud, their game could have easily gone to a replay, despite the fact that Kilmacud performed with above themselves in that All-Ireland final, performed above Glen standards in that All-Ireland final. And we both said it at that time, Kilmacud deserved to win the All-Ireland in January last year. And in this situation, Glen deserved to win it. So, like, it's all about using the same energy here. So I would say at the time, at half-time, I think it was probably right that the ref kept going on with the play. But James Brady actually mentioned last night from Montclair, check his page if you haven't already. He mentioned that if the game went to extra time, there would have been a lot of uproar on would it have gone to a replay or would it have gone to extra time. I think a replay would, if it was a draw at the end of the time, I think the replay probably was the right call there. But even looking at the calendar, and a lot of people bring that argument up on social media. Next weekend, I'm thinking, is the intermediate and the junior double headers in football and hurling next week. So I think there would have been time for Kilmacud and Glen to go to a replay next week with the fog and everything. But as soon as the game started and as soon as Glen were 9 points to 4 up, I think the referee was in that kind of a position where you can't stop this, because it just would have been unfair on Glen after the performance they put in that first half.
Yeah, I suppose you have to credit both sets of players and management as well, though, for carrying on and still producing a well thought out game, or a really good game, to be fair. Hello, my name is James. It's the Toronto game looked worse on TV, wasn't as bad being there. Yeah, anyone who was at the Watty Graham's Glen Kilmacud Crokes game, let us know in the comments, was it as bad as what I looked on the TV? I've seen a couple of videos of people who were at the game and it looked as bad, if not worse, because of the fact that, like, at least we're watching, and I know myself and yourself, our Osquailga isn't too good, unfortunately, so probably can't really make out what's actually happening, but at least we had something to go off of, whereas the people in the stadium would have just heard shouts and stuff like that and everything else. And I was seeing on Twitter, someone was saying they couldn't even see the scoreboard or anything like that because of the fog. So it was very, very hard for people to actually make out what was going on. But do let us know in the comments live if anyone was at it. But yeah, you have to commend both sets of players, to be fair, for putting out a game like that in the conditions, like in the absolute freezing of weather as well. And it could have very easily been a very, very cagey game considering the weather. But actually, I felt, and maybe the weather helped, but I felt like it was actually quite open, a bit chaotic. And look, there was a lot of mistakes and errors that led to a lot of those goals. But you do have to commend both players for putting in my opinion, what was actually a great game.
Even players that were playing on the pitch on the day, actually, there was an interview with Michael Warnock, the man of the match, on RT radio afterwards, and he was saying he was marking Shane Walsh and did a very good job while I'm speaking on him. Michael Warnock was absolutely superb. But him and Shane Walsh were actually speaking to each other on the pitch. I was hearing this in the interview now, that they couldn't see what was happening when the ball was coming in, for example. And Michael Warnock was actually jokingly saying to I think Damien O'Mara, who was interviewing him on RT radio, and he said that if he knew where the ball was going, he wouldn't have told Shane Walsh where the ball was going, because it's kind of the dark arts kind of thing with Waddy Graham's Glen or any team that's in the ascendancy. But yeah, that was the situation what players had on the pitch. And even I know I talked about Shane Walsh goal, the second goal for Kilmacud, but even the Ethan Doherty goal where David Higgins gets intercepted. Like, even look at the highlights, I couldn't see what was going on, and I don't think any of the players seen what's going on. Again, Seamus made a very good point last night to say that imagine if players were expecting a tackle to come in that fog. Like, a player could have easily ran into another player and intercepted him or whatever. So players were kind of in a situation where they're kind of expecting the unexpected, if you know what I mean. Like, it was that kind of a situation in that game, and it was, as you mentioned there, it was chaotic, and it brought to the atmosphere of a very good game in football. And in fairness, 114 to 210 for a game of football nowadays is a very good score, especially in the weather conditions that we had. But in terms of, I suppose, player safety is a thing as well. I know Waddy Graham's Glen were ahead at that point and deserved to be in front. They played out their skins in that first half alone, and especially in the 10 minutes spell in the second half as well early on. But player welfare maybe has to come into question as well, because imagine if the player isn't expecting a player coming in through the fog and he gets a belt. Mm-hmm. So you have to think of it in that kind of context as well. There could have been a serious injury maybe as well. And apparently the rule is with the referee, if they have to stand in the middle of the pitch to start off at the start of the game, and if they can't see one end of the goal and they can't see the other end, then they have to call the game off. I'd love to know what was Conor Lane, the referee on that day's thought process in this. Did he actually see the goals in either side of his direction? I'd love to know his point of view on this. I'd love if anybody had an interview with him or anybody had chatted to him after the game, because, like, by the looks of it on the TV, it looked like you couldn't see the other side of the pitch. Never mind, like, seeing in a wider distance the two goals in the middle of the pitch. So, like, I would say it looked invisible out there. People were kind of expecting the unexpected, and Michael Warwick and Shane Walsh were even having a joke about it. But yeah, I'm sure in that heat of the moment, in the heat of battle, I don't think there was any joke around with Waddy Graham's Glen and Kilmacud Crokes. It was kind of frightening for many of those players, in my opinion. Like, imagine a player coming out of a thick fog, out of somewhere, and then going to rugby tackle you. I don't know, did you see the movie, I think it was years ago, Kung Fu Panda, where Tai Lung comes out of the fog to attack the panda himself. And yeah, it was kind of like that movie in its own right, but yeah, it was amazing conditions. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that. I actually was at a soccer training session one year, and we were in an AstroTurf, I think. The electricity went out. Like, it was all lit and everything like that. It was floodlights and everything, and the floodlight actually went out. The electricity went out, and we were joking around, players running into each other and all that. But eventually, the training session had to come to a close because it was just unsafe. So I'd love to know what was Conor Lane's thought process in this. I'd love to know his point of view on this, because from looking at it on the TV, it looked like players were kind of lost out there in that fog.
Yeah, no, it was. It did look crazy, all right. And obviously our mutual friend, Conor McKenna, not the Tyrone version, obviously the Westmead man. Yeah, he put up a video of he was at the game, and I seen his video on Twitter, and again, like, it just looked like he couldn't really see what was going on. And Denise says here, my uncle was at the game, went on a big rant saying his money was wasted, great game, I couldn't see, and said he just listened to it on the radio. And yes, you were saying, like, the radio wasn't really working then as well. Like, just an absolute disaster class, really, all around. And look, it's no one's fault. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of them things. Like, obviously, you know, I'm guessing the fog was the reason why the radio went as well, or maybe that's an extraordinary coincidence. I don't really know, but yeah, like, just very unfortunate. But maybe they should have called the game. James says, lads, are you heading to the final? I might go. The final is the final in Croke Park.
It is, yeah, in 2 weeks time.
2 weeks time, yeah. I might go to it. Why not? I mean, Crokes aren't there, but at the end of the day, I'm not a Crokes man anyway. I probably would have been shouting for Brigids in the final anyway. So yeah, like, I mean, it should be it should be a very interesting game. Like, Brigids have a lot of young players. Glen are probably a lot more experienced at this stage. But yeah, it should be a very interesting final. Looking back at the game, though, the semi-final between Glen and Crokes, and from what we could see, like, obviously Glen raced into a 5-point lead at half-time. Like, Crokes hit the opening 2 scores of the game, and at the start you were thinking it's business as usual for Kilmacud Crokes, but Glen, like, outscored Kilmacud Crokes 9 points to 2 after that, between the end of the first half, and even at the start of the second half they kicked the opening 2 scores as well. So what was it that Glen done, from what you saw, that led them to be in that strong of a position? Because it's very rare that you see Crokes in that position. Like, I know they had a bit of a deficit to overturn against Raheny earlier in the year, but considering how good they've looked after that point, like, what was it, do you think, that led Glen to be as strong as they were in those moments?
A very good point, actually, mentioned. I don't know who it was exactly, but they were saying that Glen has had, competitive games up until this game, week in, week out. Whereas Kilmacud Crokes, their last competitive game, I think it was actually Seamus, by matter of interest, saying that Kilmacud's last competitive game really was Raheny. They hammered Ballyboden in the final. In the quarter-final, they were very, very comfortable against Aero Oak. In the semi-final, RD came back into the game, but they were never threatening to go on and win the game. And Naas kind of threw it away in the second half with a few missed opportunities. So Kilmacud didn't really get tested since that Raheny or Dublin Senior Football Championship semi-final, whereas Glen, since the Maher of Felt game, really, where they were comfortable enough in that Derry final, they had a tough against Carrigan. I know Carrigan had a man sent off into Moss McCann, but they had a tough in that game. In the semi-final, they could have easily lost against Naomh Quinnell. Naomh Quinnell, I watched that game in full, and I thought Naomh Quinnell were probably the better team on that particular day in the Ulster semi-final. And in the final against Scottstown, we thought Scottstown would give them a test, and they did. So maybe there was that element that Glen had more battles going into this All-Ireland semi-final, whereas Kilmacud Crokes didn't. And I think that played into the game too, and Glen just took that drive from their previous games to get over the line into this game, whereas Kilmacud Crokes kind of were flat on their feet early on. I know they got them 4 points in fairness, and raced into the lead for a bit of time there, but Glen, I thought, and even I was saying to Seamus last night in his show, the midfield that Glen had, I even look at the match programme, Glen's midfield was actually better than Crokes. Like, Conor Glass and Emmett Bradley is the best midfield partnership in the club championship without question. And when you look at Kilmacud Crokes, Great Diaz has done well for Kilmacud Crokes over the last few years, but he's 33, 34 now. He's getting on a small bit. And I think time kind of caught up with him yesterday. I think Conor Glass ran amok on him. Emmett Bradley was superb as well. Mark O'Leary did well enough, but is he up to Conor Glass and Emmett Bradley levels? Probably not. So I think that midfield battle, it was always going to be vital, and Glen dominated that facet of play. And I think they got their matchups very, very well done in that game. Like, even Michael Warnock going at Shane Walsh, Paul Mannion being taken as well. Ryan Dugan had an outstanding game at full back for Glen. The 2 Mulhollands at wing back were marauding up and down the field. Ciara McFaul. And I said to Seamus during the week, or Seamus said to me rather, Ciara McFaul, who was missing last year for that Kilmacud All-Ireland final, he will be vital in this Glen team, and he proved to be. He was in outstanding form and scored that 8 point, I think, the second last one before half-time, before Conor Glass got one over to ramp home a 5 point lead. Even Conor Carville, a leader in that back line, the captain for a good reason, obviously. Conor Bradley, a very good leader in goal. So I think Glen, the key was, I think, they had better tests going into the game. Their midfield was well on top of Kilmacud Crokes, and their defence, I think they got their matchups absolutely spot on. Shane Walsh and Paul Mannion really didn't get a sniff in the first half. I know Mannion did well in the second half as it transpired, but Glen had them down to a T, in fairness, and Shane Walsh, Paul Mannion, they didn't get much of the ball. Michael Warnock and Ryan Dugan were doing an outstanding job in that full back line, and Glen, that was the platform for them to build on towards their success in this game.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you mentioned, the return of Ciara McFaul, like he's been huge for Glen, and obviously Michael Warnock had an absolute cracking game, as you said, at cornerback. Like, he was absolutely outstanding, and he was mostly playing at centre back last year for Waddy Glen, in fairness. And the return of Emmett Bradley, I think, has been a big sort of addition to Waddy Glen. Like, he wasn't really too involved last year. I was hearing there was a few injury problems, and maybe that's why he wasn't involved too heavily with Derry over the last year as well. But like Glen, they do look like a very complete side right now. And like, as you said, for the opening 40 minutes, you could really see it out there. Like,
oh, definitely, yeah, in fairness. And even you look at him and Bradley, he looks even fitter and sharper than he has ever done. Like, in fairness, last year for Derry, or the last 2 years, I remember Niall Toner in every single game really for Derry. It was nearly the late change kind of a joke. Niall Toner was always going to replace him with Bradley in the team, but Bradley, he's stepped up when it counted in the last few years, and he's performed absolutely brilliantly. Like, even his clutch scores and clutch moments, like that moment against Naomh Quinnell, Glen wouldn't have been there without that moment from Emmett Bradley in that Ulster semi-final. So Glen have a lot to thank the midfielder for, in fairness. Ethan Doherty was quite enough in the first half as well, but he stepped up when counted with getting that goal. That was a crucial score in the game. I know there was a mistake, a kind of miscommunication thing in the full back line for Kilmacud, but for Ethan Doherty to pounce on that and get it into the back of the net was superb from his point of view. Conor McGuinness, they're a good player as well. Like, they had good players coming onto the pitch, like Stevie O'Hara and Jody McDermott are good players to come on as well. And Kilmacud, they did well in the second half, in fairness. But I mentioned this to Seamus as well last night. There's Waddy Glen players that are probably around the fringes, not Conor Glassy, but Emmett Bradley, Ethan Doherty. Now, the likes of Jack Doherty, Conor McGuinness, Colin Mulholland, Ewan Mulholland, they perform really, really well, probably over their expected aims in many ways in this championship. Whereas Kilmacud Crokes, they're big power players: Darren Mullen, Shane Cunningham, Mark O'Leary, Hugh Kenny, Luke Ward. Like, Luke Ward, in fairness, has been a find in this championship, in fairness. But Darren Mullen and Shane Cunningham in particular, Shane Cunningham got hooked off very, very early. Early than he probably has usually ever done in a Kilmacud Crokes shirt. And Darren Mullen, you'd be kind of worried about Darren Mullen's form going into this game. Like, he was very good in the last year in the All-Ireland Club Championship, but he didn't score as much going into this game. Like, even I was doing stats and stuff leading up to the semi-final, and he hasn't scored as much as maybe people have expected him to. Like, there was even calls from yourself, Seamus, or anybody other the Dublin fan base for him to get into the Dublin team. And I think those kind of calls have been quenched a small bit now by his performances for Kilmacud Crokes. So I just think the big part players as well for Waddy Glen stood up when counted, whereas the Kilmacud Crokes players, unfortunately for them this year, I don't think did enough to stay for claim.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and as you mentioned there with Kilmacud Crokes, like, I mean, is it a case of it that it went wrong for them, or was it that Glen were just by far the better side? Because I suppose it would be very easy to look at Crokes and say, you know, there were 7 points down at the start of the second half. Things were going horribly wrong. But, like, were things going that badly for Crokes, or were Glen just that good, you know, in that first sort of opening 40 minutes or so?
I think the first half you have to give credit to Glen, because they were just went out of the traps with full pelt, and I thought they definitely deserved their lead at halftime. But Kilmacud, like, some people say that there wasn't fight in them, but there was clearly fight in the first half. There was a few hefty challenges going in, even the Brian Sheehy challenge, which was a red card, I will point that out. But, like, there was still hefty challenges going in, and it showed the Kilmacud Crokes were still up for the fight. And even at the second half, but at the same time, it probably needed a bit of magic from one of the key men in Shane Walsh or Paul Mannion to swing the game back in Kilmacud Crokes' favour for maybe a small bit of time, because Shane Walsh's pass was absolutely incredible for the Hugh Kenny goal, and it was just out of this world in many ways, and that's what Kilmacud Crokes needed to get back into the game, whereas Mannion did so in the second half. They needed those two guys in particular to step up when counted for Kilmacud to get back into the game. And whereas, and that goes back to my previous point really on Kilmacud, they needed those two players to step up to provide, you know, attacking output and to provide real emphasis. Whereas Glen, I think the whole team really put in a shift, and every player knew their roles in the team, and they performed it to a team. In fairness, Mark O'Rourke And I would say Robbie Brennan's a good manager, but Malachy Rogue is one of the best in the country. And he will have got Glen ready for this game, getting them ready for this game clearly because of what happened last January. And Glen would have felt last season. I know Kilmacud were the better team in Croke Park, there's no doubt about that. But the way it ended, the way it transpired, Glen would have had the thought at the back of their minds thinking, we have some revenge to pull on Kilmacud Crokes here. And they were up for this game. They pointed to, I know they had a tough Ulster campaign with the likes of Scots and Carrigan, etc. But they would have pointed towards this game, knowing what way the draw would have gone for the All-Ireland Club Championship, and they would have pointed to that date. This is destiny. And Glen perfected their performance. They did all they could. And I just think a lot of people would be pointed towards Kilmacud maybe underperforming, which they did to an extent, other than Shane Walsh and Paul Mannion. But I think more emphasis had to go into how well Wally Graham's Glen played and how they targeted this fixture. They wanted to win this fixture and they wanted to get their revenge and win this game and eventually win their first All-Ireland. Maybe people don't realise Wally Graham's Glen are going for their first ever All-Ireland title against Brigids, and they're going as underdogs. Well, Brigids won an All-Ireland previously, so Wally Graham's Glen, I'm telling you, they would be hungry going into this All-Ireland final. They won't think the job is done quite yet, but you could see the reaction even for the Glen players at the end of it. I know there was fog and everything, but you could see the reaction from behind the goal, and they were absolutely ecstatic. And why wouldn't they be? They beat one of the best club teams in the country, and deservedly so. Their performance, especially in the first half, I would say from minute 1 to minute 40, I think they were absolutely superb, and that swung the game in their favour. And even some little moments when they weren't at the ascendancy, that Ethan Doherty goal, a bit of good play there to intercept the ball from David Higgins, in fairness, to slide it into the back of net, to have the calmness to do that, I think deserves a lot of praise too.
Yeah, James says maybe I'll see you there. I'll buy a point. Yeah, look, I mean, you can't beat a Croke Park Guinness, in fairness, even if it is probably going to be like €8 or $8.50 or something with the way the prices are going in Dublin at the moment. Dublin is great. Says, did you watch the pre-seasons? Watched the Dublin game. Didn't really watch any of the other games, to be honest with you, but I've seen highlights and everything else, and we'll certainly discuss them in more detail a little bit later on. In terms of Crokes fighting back, though, like at the same time, did that show like how resilient this Crokes team are? At the same time, like the fact that they were 7 points down, like in Newry, like it wasn't an away game as such because obviously it was in Newry, like, but at the same time, like they were playing, I suppose outside of Dublin for once, but like the fact they were able to dig that out in those conditions, and although they still lost the game, like you still have to commend them for fighting back. Like even after they conceded that late goal towards the end of the game, and I think from Ethan Doherty, and then Shane Walsh obviously gets goal straight after that. Like even that fight back as well, you have to commend.
You do, and that's what good champions do, in fairness. Like you do look at Limerick down through the years, you look at the Dublin team under first Jim Gavin and then Desi Farrell. That's what they do, these sorts of champions. The Kilmacud Crokes were good champions, in fairness to them. But I just feel without Shane Walsh and without Paul Mannion, I think they would have looked a shadow of the team they were yesterday. Like even look at scores now. Like other than them two guys in particular, Kilmacud Crokes didn't have a single player to score two scores or more. And that probably epitomised the way the game went. They needed a bit of magic from Mannion, a bit of magic from Shane Walsh. That pass to Hugh Kenny was just out of this world. It was just outstanding in its own right. And Kilmacud Crokes got back to the game because of them two lads on the pitch. And you have to give them credit too. You have to give credit for them fighting back, in fairness. But I think Robbie Brennan, actually, again on RT Radio 1, I listened to a lot of RT Radio 1 now yesterday. Probably the only time I'll do it, to be honest, maybe if I'm coming home from a Cork game in the league, sometime in January or February. But I was listening to Brennan's interview, I think, with Damien O'Meara and Marty Morrissey. I'm not sure who it was. But he was saying that it wasn't Kilmacud Crokes themselves providing excellence coming back into the game. It was maybe Wally Graham's Glen taking their foot off the gas. And you kind of have to agree with that to some instances, in fairness. I know Kilmacud did very, very well to come back into the game, but look, in many ways, I think it was just Wally Graham's game. They were 11 points to 4 up, and they might have thought, let's just sit back here and just soak a bit of pressure. Kilmacud Crokes, with the defence that we have, with the defenders that we have, the likes of Michael Warnock, Kieran McFaul, the two Mulhollands, they're not getting past us for a goal. they wouldn't really expect it, especially in the fog, for Shane Walsh to produce a moment of brilliance the way he did, the vision that he has, especially in that fog. Like, when you consider the elements of the day in Park Esler and the skill execution, I think it was just incredible what Shane Walsh did, in fairness. And Glen showed they did not expect what was happening. And it was just a brilliant pass. It definitely opened the can of worms in many ways in this game, and Kilmacud Crokes were back into it. But I do agree with Robbie Brennan to an extent. I do think the Wally Gramsdane were kind of sitting on their laurels a small bit. And why wouldn't they? They were 11 points to 4 up. That was 7 points. That's a substantial lead with 20 minutes to go, especially in the weather conditions that was there. So I think they sat back a small bit, allowed a bit of pressure. Shane Walsh produced a brilliant moment, but even when Kilmacud Crokes were getting back into the game, they didn't have the smarts when they were point down, should I say, even at the end. I know passing around the back, they had to go for goal, but especially in the weather conditions, they were point down. The last thing you should do, Aaron, is pass around your own goal. Pass ahead of your own goal. And unfortunately for David Higgins, who did have a good game, in fairness, kicked a wonderful point, in fairness to him, from goal, from play, in fairness, was a brilliant score. But just a bit of street smarts. Don't pass it around your own goal. And unfortunately for Kilmacud Crokes, they passed it around their own goal. Ball intercepted. Ethan Doherty puts it in the net. And I know Shane Walsh got that goal at the end, but in fairness, once that goal went in, I think the head started to drop, and you were thinking, yeah, that's it. Kilmacud Crokes are gone here. And yeah, a good comeback by Kilmacud Crokes, inspired by Mannion and Walsh. But ultimately, in that last moment of play around the full back line, when you're point down, going up the field to try and get an equaliser, and in the fog especially, you just don't do those sorts of things.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as well. Like, and obviously David Higgins wouldn't be the regular starter for Kilmacud Crokes. Conor Ferris would usually be the number one. So I'm not entirely sure if it was an injury, but you certainly wouldn't usually see Conor Ferris play a sweeper keeper type role in the game. So I don't know if it was something tactical from Robbie Brennan to try and I suppose add something else in the attack for Kilmacud Crokes. But albeit if it was something tactical, you think he would have played with a keeper like that for the entirety of the year. And yeah, like I'd agree with you as well. Like, I'm not entirely sure what he was doing towards the end of the game. And like, it wasn't a do or die situation as well. There was still a couple of minutes left. They were only a point down. It wasn't like it was 3 points and they had to throw, all the pigeons at it. Like, they still had a bit of time really to get back in the game. And yeah, it was an unusual error. In fairness, the other semi-final, big result for St. Brigid's. They come through the test of Castlehaven, 111 to 10 points. Massive result in the end for St. Brigid's. You were at the game. Conditions weren't as bad here, although when you looked at it on the TV, like, you'd one half of the pitch that was icy, the other half of the pitch was completely clear. Like, looking at it on TV, it nearly looked like two seasons in the one image, or it nearly looked like a faulty FIFA 23 or something like that in terms of the weather. But yeah, what was it like to be at the game, and what was your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it was good atmosphere for both crowds, in fairness. St. Brigid's brought a lot of fans to the ground, in fairness. Castlehaven obviously always do, from West Cork, their football proud area, and it was just a brilliant spectacle, in fairness. But I think the first half in particular, Brigid's won it then. They were 174 points up at 1 point, and it was a good goal from Brian Darwin, well taken. But I think there was a turnover for Castlehaven. I think it was Brian Hurley passing to his brother Michael. The ball gets intercepted. Brigid's go down the other end goal. And I think those sorts of key moments, Castlehaven just didn't perfect it, and Brigid's did. And unfortunately for Castlehaven, those sorts of errors come back to bite you in the end. But in fairness, Castlehaven did two brilliant goal chances in this game. Jack Hallan, but to be fair, like, even looking at it from the crowd, I know Jack Hallan was nearly going for the point in, and it just cracked off the bar, and you're thinking, is this going to be your day? And then Rory McGuire, this was a clear goal chance in the second half. I think it was 8 points to 1-7 at this point. Castlehaven would have gone ahead for the first point at this time in that game if that ball went in the back of the net. Rory McGuire probably had one of the best years out of any Cork player in football, and he's had a marvellous year, in fairness to him, and scored a goal against Derry in the All-Ireland quarter-final. So you would have expected them to net that, but unfortunately, it was just a blaze shot. It went off the bar and went out off the play there. But yeah, it was a big chance for Castlehaven, and you felt at that point it's not your day, simply not your day. And ironically enough, I was hearing somewhere, I think Tommy Rooney mentioned it to James McCarthy, the Castlehaven manager, that exact same goal in Thurles was where, I'm not sure, were you familiar with the ALB documentary thing, Aaron, with John Luca Vialli and Harry Redknapp, Castlehaven against Erin's the Erin's player kicks it against one post to another, and it miraculously goes over the line, and Castlehaven go out in the All-Ireland semi-final, no less, in Thurles, and it was the exact same goal. It's just a coincidence. James McCarthy was saying it's a coincidence. There has to be some magic there, simply, and not in the good way for Castlehaven fans there. But ultimately, I think Brigids, other than Ben O'Carroll, a lot of people mentioned his performance, but I don't think he was the forefront as many performances as Brigids had in this championship. He scored 7 goals and 29 points up until this game. But the likes of Brian Derwin, the likes of Bobby Nugent, Kieran Sugru, Eddie Nolan in the midfield, they stepped up to the plate and they performed absolutely brilliantly. And I think, much like Watty Graham's done against Kilmacud Crokes, getting their matchups right, I think Brigids got their matchups absolutely spot on against Castlehaven, and Castlehaven, I think, got it a small bit wrong. Brigids, Brian Stack was always going to go on Brian Hurley, and it was always going. Brian Hurley scored 7 points in fairness to him, but Brian Stack gave it to him all game, and he was on his tone in fairness to him. Ronan Stack was brilliant in the back line as well. Pierce Frost, they all very good games for Brigids, whereas Castlehaven, Ben O'Carroll is obviously the main forward for Brigids, but I was actually so surprised to see Castlehaven put Ronan Walsh and Johnny O'Regan on him, and they'd be probably the 2 weaklings in the back line for Castlehaven, and you're thinking you're putting them on Brigids' best forward by a mile. It wasn't really the smartest idea, in my opinion. Like, you would have probably been better. Damien Callahan's usually a sweeper, so fair enough. Rory Maguire possibly would have been a better matchup for Ben O'Carroll. And he proved it against Roscommon in the championship and against Derry in the All-Ireland championship. He's an excellent defender. So it was just a bit peculiar there in midfield. I thought they were brilliant. Brigids in Eddie Nolan and Shane Curran. They definitely got the better of Conor Callahan and Andrew Welton, who usually do very well in the midfield at the end of the day. And they paid for sloppy errors at the end, Castlehaven, even at the end. With the pass to Colin Maguire, I'm not sure who exactly put the pass in when they were chasing a goal, and unfortunately the hand pass went over Colin Maguire's head, and you could just see the frustration from the Castlehaven players. Just wasn't their day at the end of the day, and Brigids definitely deserved their victory.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I suppose from a Castlehaven perspective, like, where do you think it went wrong ultimately? Like, I suppose they've had a very good year. Like, I think you'd have to commend how much they keep fighting back. Like, they done it against Donegal, obviously never led in the game, managed to fight back and win on penalties. And even in this game as well, like they kept on fighting back. Like, they kept giving themselves a chance towards the end. But ultimately, where do you think it went wrong?
I just think some moments went wrong for them. Even the goal itself, like a turnover, you can't do that against sides like Brigids. They will punish you, no doubt about that. I think a few frees as well. Brian Hurley again had an outstanding game, 7 points, and he was superb in this game, and was Castlehaven's shining light. But there was a moment in the game where he gets 2 45s in succession and misses them both. And again, you're thinking, if those sorts of things don't go well for you, it just isn't your day. And it just wasn't Castlehaven's day. And even look at scores as well. Brigids had 6 or 7 different scores. Castlehaven only had 3. Other than Brian Hurley, they scored 3 points. And ultimately, that's not really good enough to win an All-Ireland semi-final, unfortunately, for Castlehaven there. But they've had a brilliant year. They've had a brilliant year in Cork. They won the Cork Championship for the first time in 10 years. They won the Munster Championship for the first time since the 90s. They've had an outstanding year. Fair play to them. But I just think a few moments in this game kind of went wrong for them, and shooting sections, well, they made the wrong shot options. Even the Rory Maguire chance, a rush of blood to the head, I think, hitting it against the bar. Like, usually in those sorts of situations, I'm thinking, why can't players kick it on the ground where it's out of the reach of the goalkeeper and it's on the ground? It's tough for the goalkeeper to get there, but it's not just Rory Maguire, really, Aaron. I don't know, do you notice this up and down the country? When players get in those situations, they have a tendency to blast the ball against the bar or go high for the goalkeeper. But really, the good solution is to just put it on the ground. I think a prime example, actually Conor Doherty against Cork in the All-Ireland quarter-final. It was a crucial moment in the game. Derry were a point up, but he slid it past it into the net nearly behind Micheál Martin. And those sorts of moments in games define who wins All-Irelands or not. And unfortunately for Castlehaven, the moments just didn't go their way. And even when they had Brigids by the throat, like in that third quarter, Brigids scored no score whatsoever. And Castlehaven, I think, was 8 points to 1-7. Brigids were really, really struggling. Then Robbie Dolan gets that point, and as the points went over, Robbie Dolan's, I think it was John Cunningham's, Paul McGrath's, as soon as they went over each and every time, the confidence started to degrade even more and more and more for Castlehaven. And you could just see it, even the pass at the end to Colin Maguire, and it was just frustration really at certain things in the game. But I just think certain moments didn't go Castlehaven's game away. But Brigids were the much better team in this game. It wasn't refereeing decisions whatsoever. It was just bits of execution that didn't go Castlehaven's way in this game.
Yeah, and I suppose for St. Brigid's, like someone was saying to me on Twitter last night, like they've 5 players under the age of 23, like they've in their starting 15, they've a lot of young players in their squad in general. Obviously, we saw a lot of them yesterday, likes of Brian Derwin, likes of Ben O'Carroll, Bobby Nugent, like a lot of very good, tricky forwards, and obviously recognisable inter-county players at the back as well, and the likes of Brian Stack. So how good are St. Brigid's? Like they've definitely flown under the radar for a majority of the year. Like, and when you actually look at it, like they've beaten a lot of very good teams. I mean, they beat Boyle in the Roscommon final, a team who had the likes of Enda Smith in there, for example, came through Mohill, who've got, you know, an inter-county star on their own, and Keith Byrne. They beat Corofin in the Connacht final, and now they've gone and beaten Castlehaven. So how good are St. Brigid's, and like, can they do anything, do you think, against White Graham's Glen? Are they going in as underdogs, or is this game even, or maybe Brigids are the favourites?
No, I think Glen are the clear favourites. There's no doubts about that. But Brigids deserved their win now yesterday. They were brilliant. In that first half, it was kind of a story of two halves, really, Aaron, with Brigids' performance. In the first half, they looked like world beaters. Everything they kicked went over the bar, and everything they executed was to a T. And it was brilliant to watch, in fairness. And Ben O'Carroll, to everyone's surprise, really, including my own, wasn't at the forefront to Brigids' dominance, really. Like Brian Derwin was outstanding, Bobby Nugent, Kieran Sugrue, they all stepped up to the plate, in fairness. But then the second half of the third quarter, everything they kicked went wide. And it was kind of like, if you were, okay, Castlehaven are a good side, but they are no White Graham's Glen whatsoever. They're not even a Kilmacud Crokes, Castlehaven. They're not at that stage in their development quite yet. They're a young team themselves, and they will develop. But if Brigids were to produce the same third quarter as they did against Castlehaven to Glen would punish them. With the likes of Kieran McFaul in that team, Conor Glass, Danny Talon, Conor McGuckin, they will punish them. There's no doubt about that. So I think Brigids, to an extent, got away with some things. And even in those sorts of situations, like the Rory Maguire chance, if that chance fell to, I don't know, out of random, Conor Glass, if that fell to Conor Glass, that's in the back of the net. There's no doubt about that. Or and even worse, the ball is over the bar, and then there's a point in between the teams. So those sorts of situations, I think Brigids need to learn from this. They need to look at the tapes again. They need to go over what went wrong in the third quarter. They need to probably shoot better. Like even I think in the first half, they won wide in the whole half, and it was incredible shooting in its own right. Then the second half, in the third quarter alone, I think they had about 3 or 4 wides. They had 6 wides in the whole second half. And it was just, you know, they were snatching at chances. They were kind of panicking. And as soon as Castlehaven started to gain a bit of confidence, Brigids, you know, started doing things that they didn't do in the first half. And I worry for them if that sort of them sort of scenarios occur again in the All-Ireland final. That's why I'd worry for Brigids in this game. I wouldn't worry about the players they have. Ben O'Hara's a superb player. Brian Stack, I'd imagine, will be the man to go on. Danny Talon. Ethan Doherty will be taken, I don't know who by, but Rory Fallon looks the good candidate for that. I think the midfield battle will be massive in that All-Ireland final. Emma Bradley and Conor Glass, as I mentioned, two of the best midfield partnership in the club championship. Shane Conan and Eddie Nolan are not a million miles off that either. And they definitely dominated Conor Cahalane now yesterday in Temple Stadium. So I would think Brigids have the capabilities of producing a brilliant performance in midfield and producing a brilliant start to the game. Even against Corofin, actually, they had a very good first half. They were almost effortless, I'd say, in the first 20 minutes, as far as my memory serves me correctly there. Then Corfin get a couple of goals. Then it's back in the melting pot a small bit. Brigids get away with it again later on down the game. Again, maybe it shows their battling qualities in the last quarter in many ways. Because they were under the cost of the third quarter against Castlehaven. They were under the cost of the third quarter against Corfin. But they still went out and won the games. So maybe that question mark about Brigids has kind of been quashed a small bit. So maybe that would be to their advantage. But I just think Corfin, a lot of people, including Jason Keelan from the Loaf of Bread podcast on Shames' podcast during the week, was saying that Corfin, he thought, were a bit overrated because he plays 5-side, I think, with a few Galway players in general, and he was just saying the Corfin were overrated by the population in this country. And Castlehaven, in my opinion, watching the Cork Championship, I didn't expect them to win the Cork Championship. I expected someone like Nemo because of their experience, or the Bars because of the players they have. So Castlehaven were kind of a shock team coming out of Cork. So Brigids are not going to face a Castlehaven or a Corfin in the final. They're going to face one of the best teams in the country. No doubt about that with what you're going to say. I think Brigids probably have to put in the perfect performance from minute 1 to minute 60 to win the game. I just don't think, I know Brigids are outstanding players, but I don't think they're capable of doing that just yet in their development. But as you mentioned there are a lot of players under 23. They will learn from this experience. I think if they put up a test to Watty Graham's in the All-Ireland final, I think they'll be happy enough with their display in Croke Park.
Yeah, like, is it not a case though with Brigids that they're more so controlling the game in the second half and getting a lot of men behind the ball and just taking the sting out of it? Because, like, as much as obviously they're going full throttle in the opening 20-30 minutes, and, you know, as you said, like, they blew Castlehaven away in the first half, did the same to Brigids, and I'm sure there's games in Roscommon maybe we haven't seen where they've done that as well. But it just looked more so like they control the game really in the second half, as opposed to, like, maybe there was a few errors here and there, and maybe they invited Castlehaven onto them a bit much. But at the same time, I thought there was a great maturity about the Brigids performance, considering they do have a lot of young players.
Yeah, to an extent, maybe in the last 10 minutes or maybe even the last 5 minutes, I think Brigids, it definitely epitomised what you said there. But even the Rory Maguire chance, like, there was a lot of space going to the goal, don't you think? Like, I just think there's usually, like, what, for example, Watty Graham playing closing out games against Kilmacud, like, even that goal chance for Castlehaven, there was so much space. Like, if Rory Maguire ran into empty space, literally, and maybe could have done better when taking that chance. Whereas the Kilmacud goal for Hugh Kenny, I don't think Glen were expecting Shane Walsh to produce a brilliant pass like they did, but up until the Shane Walsh pass, they were well set up. I just think Kilmacud, it was a well-worked move, whereas Brigids, in Castlehaven, it was just a bit too easy for Castlehaven to go through them, and a better team would have, on a better day, would have taken that goal chance there that Roy Maguire had. And I just think it's that sort of a situation. I think Corfin had a load of chances in that Connacht final. They missed a few of them. I actually have to go over. I think they had 30% or something like that shot accuracy in that Connacht final, and they were very, very poor in front of goal. Castlehaven had a 41% shot accuracy in this game. I'm double checking now. We have 41% is the exact number. I don't think Watty Graham's Glen will have that number in the All-Ireland final. I simply don't. I think they're a well-oiled machine. They're a very, very good team. They have an excellent midfield. They have excellent defenders. And attack-wise, I think they're very, very smart in their play. The Conor McGuinness, as I mentioned, Danny Talon, Ethan Doherty, they take chances when they're presented to them. Whereas I don't think Castlehaven and Corfin had the capabilities to do that. Maybe some teams in Roscommon did that and we might not have known about them. But even in the last two games, I think Brigids, on another day against a possibly better sides, could have succumbed to a few chances than what they conceded against Castlehaven yesterday and Corfin a month back.
Yeah, like, it's interesting, all right, and it certainly should be an interesting final. You're back. You'd back Glen if you had to pick now, anyway. But comfortably, do you think, or do you think it could be a close game?
I think it'll be close at half time, but I think Glen will put away. I think they just have the better mentality for these sorts of games. They have the better tenacity, better willing to go for the full 60 minutes, better attackers, better defenders, better midfield. I just think Watty Graham Glen all over the pitch. And I did say they'd win the All-Ireland since August. I'm not going to change it now, am I?
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I would have to back them as well now, in fairness. and I'd probably agree with what you say there. Like I think Brigids haven't started a lot of games very quickly. Will probably start the game fast. Although I think Glen will stick with them. I think it'll be point for point. But I do think Glen, the more the game goes on, probably in the last 15 minutes, the final quarter, I think is where Glen probably will pull away. In fairness. We'll move on to some results from pre-season competitions, because there was definitely some interesting ones. And what about this for a scoreline? London 12 points, Mayo 1-8. I know it is pre-season and everything else, so you certainly can't get carried away. And when you look at Mayo's team, they had Cillian O'Connor, who started, but aside from that, a lot of under-20 players, development players, a lot of younger players, like Frank Irwin's a player I recognise from the under-20s, and a few others as well. But look, I think the story has to be fair play to London. Shea Rafter with 6 points, getting on the score sheet. Really good performance from him. And what a day for London. London for Sam.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe there's a mismatch because London have a much bigger population than Mayo. You could
split London in two. Split London in two. I mean, London's bigger than Dublin, so I think maybe we need to start. We need to get this under control, I think.
Yeah, and even they have a club named after a soccer team. That's not fair. Full of Irish, not fair, you know. But in all seriousness, look, brilliant win for London. Brilliant win. In fairness, Mayo usually win the Connacht FBD Cup, and it was a good win for London. And maybe they could go on a run in this competition. And fair play to London players for getting up for this game. In fairness to them, to win the game. But to be honest, I think it might suit Mayo. No, I think they're out of this championship. Correct me if I'm wrong now, Aaron. I think they could be out of this FBD Cup.
So, yeah, I think it's a straight knockout. People can let us know in the comments.
If they are, I think it would actually suit Kevin McStay even more, because they can just concentrate on Division 1 now. They're younger players, the likes of I don't know if Conal Dempsey going to be involved in UL this year. And Jack Hine is another one. But a few Mayo players, young players anyway, will be involved in the Sigerson Cup this week, which we can't forget. So I think it will actually suit Mayo players even more leading up to the league campaign. So I think it would suit Kevin McStay down to a T, in fairness. And look, it was a good win for London, in fairness, and New York had a good win in the hurling, I think, over Mayo themselves as well in the Connacht hurling league. I think it was. It was Mayo, actually. Mayo did not have a good weekend. They didn't, simply, in the pre-season competition. So yeah, it's just a Mayo thing, I suppose. But look, I try to be excited about these pre-season competitions, Aaron, but after what happened with the Wicklow and Wexford game last week, I'm just like, why are these games even happening? I'm sorry, I just cannot get excited for the FBD League or the McGrath Cup or whatever. Like, even Cork were in action against Clare in the McGrath Cup. They had a good win, 2-14 to 8 points, but I'm just like, don't really care. It's a game. It's a pre-season game. And I'm just caring more about the Sigerson Cup and the Dr. Hartley Cup or whatever, the schools competitions, and then the Allianz League. I don't really care about these league competitions. And it was a good win for London. Fair play to them, and it might be a monumental victory to push them on to a good run in Division 4. But ultimately, Aaron, I don't think it means much, these pre-season competitions. There was no uproar at Mayo. They knew, like, it's more of a rest for them, so maybe it's more of a positive for them that they lost. So I just feel, look, Mayo will concentrate in the league now. Kevin McStay will have them ramped up for a hectic Division 1 campaign. Whereas London, it was a good win for them, but doesn't mean much.
Yeah. Thomas says London had an experimental team as well. Shea Rafter is one of their homegrown players. Denise says, as a Mayo fan, I'm glad we lost, because when we peak early in the season, we tend to somewhat do well. We tend to do somewhat well in the championship. Denise says, and the FBD is a knockout as well, in fairness. And yeah, like, just looking through the London side, the only player I could really recognise is Liam Gallagher, and that's not the former Oasis singer. He was part of the London team, obviously, last year. But yeah, like, as Denise said there, could that be a sign maybe that Mayo, like, when we've looked at Mayo in the last couple of years, they've gone very strong in the league. Obviously there was a couple of years ago where they got relegated. But generally, like, I think they've been in 3 of the last 4 league finals. Like, when you discount 2021, because obviously there was no league final that year. So 3 league finals in 5 years, you could say, and they've obviously won it on 2 occasions. So, like, is this a case that maybe Mayo are not going to go strong in the league and might be actually maybe in a bit of relegation bother?
Maybe so, but at the same time, the players would be off the FPD campaign now, and they might focus solely on the league. So I just think that Mayo will be all ready to go guns blazing for the league. In fairness, like they have to try to stay up. In fairness, because Division 1 is going to be a bear pit this year in terms of staying up, and I think that's the main aim for many other teams. Like Kerry and Dublin, I don't think will go down. Galway, Derry probably won't either. So you're looking at probably Monaghan, Tyrone, Roscommon, and Mayo. 2 of those will go down. So, like, I think Mayo will go full head for leather in the league. I just think they will have enough to stay up. Kevin McStay has built a good team there. They were largely playing an experimental team yesterday, and I don't think the FBD Cup is a matter for Mayo, in my opinion, this year. So I just think they'll be all guns blazing to get survived in the league, go into the Connacht Championship, play against Roscommon, try and win that game, and then go into a Connacht final against Galway, and hopefully, for their sake, go on and win it. So, yeah, I think Mayo will be all ready to go for the season, and maybe going out of this FBD competition might be a blessing in disguise for them.
Yeah, like just going through some other notable results that we saw from pre-season. One that stood out was Donegal 3-16, Armagh 1-6. Obviously Jim McGuinness's first game in charge. Armagh obviously did put out the under. It was a mix of under 20s and development players, whereas Donegal were definitely a lot more stronger. Like the likes of Keane Thompson out there. You have the likes of Oisin Gallen coming off the bench. Micheál Langan was in the side. Ryan McHugh was playing. Patrick McBrearty. Like, it's so many star players really from 1 to 15 in there from Donegal. It certainly wasn't Donegal's strongest team, you would say, but Donegal were very strong. Result aside, like, does this tell us that Jim McGuinness is Donegal? Like, they're going all guns blazing here, like, and they're gonna really go strong in the league, because usually if teams are going strong in pre-season, it means they're going to go strong in the league as well.
Maybe so, and I think Donegal are going really, really well, in fairness, with the win over Tyrone, more so yet on Sunday, and then the win over Armagh. It was a good way to start for Jim McGuinness, in fairness. A good couple of wins there in the McKenna Cup, which is usually, in fairness, taken seriously by many Ulster teams, and for Donegal to go on and win that game is brilliant. And even Ryan McHugh, I notice, is back at the team for Donegal. That's a great sign for Jim McGuinness. But not such a great sign. Actually, breaking news coming in, I think at 5 o'clock this evening. I don't know if you've seen this, Jim McGuinness is hit with an 8-week sideline ban. So at the moment, he is not going to be on the sideline for games against Cork, against, I think, Meath, Kildare, all them league games. He's not going to be available until, I think, match day 6 in the Alliance League from the sideline. So, bit of a thing, but the reason for that, I think you heard the story as well. Finbar Rorty, who played at number 2 cornerback against Armagh, was 17 years of age at the time playing against Armagh. He's now turned 18 years of age. Happy birthday to him. But that was against the rules. Donegal can't play 17-year-olds. They have to play 18-year-olds or over, and they broke the rules in doing that. So, as a matter of interest, then Jim McGuinness is hit with an 8-week sideline ban, but they can appeal it. They can appeal it, Donegal. I don't know, will they appeal it this week? But it is a big story, in fairness. And as well as that, the Naomh Quinn youngster, who is Finbar Rorty, has also been handed a 2-week ban and not eligible to play for the Ulster side competitively at any stage in 2024. So it's a big ban when you think about it for playing in a pre-season game. So I'm not sure what any of the commenters think of that kind of ban there. But yeah, it's the rumours are going around now that Jimmy's missing matches rather than winning matches.
Wow. And did you say that Finbar wouldn't be allowed play for Donegal at all in 2024?
That's what the article said, I think, on Balls.ie and the Irish Examiner. John Fogarty wrote it, and Gary Connerton from the Balls.ie reported it. So it's a big story. Yeah,
like that would be a bit crazy, to be honest with you. Like to ban a player from not playing for his county, like obviously a minor level or whatever. Like, it would just be a little bit bizarre.
I think, Aaron, I don't know, the wording in this article is kind of unclear, in fairness, where it comes to Finbar Rorty, but I think it's just senior level that he's not allowed to play. he's allowed to play, I think, minor under 20, but that obviously has to be confirmed.
Fair. Yeah, Thomas says total rubbish. You have 17-year-olds playing professional football, and it was just one match. Yeah, it's a little bit unusual. Like I to a certain extent, I can understand it because you don't want to. There kind of has to be a cut-off point because you can't play like 15 and 16-year-olds and everything else. So there does have to be an age limit, and there does have to be a rule. Yeah, like you could, I don't know, maybe there should be a rule where you can only have a certain amount of players under 18 for preseason games. Or maybe there's a case of you have to run it by someone, like you have to let someone, whoever's running things in the McKenna Cup, you have to let a games officer know, or a referee know, or something like that. Maybe there has to be something that's like a waiver. So I don't know, like something like that needs to be done, but it does seem incredibly harsh. But look, at the end of the day, if Jim McGuinness broke the rules, he broke the rules, and it's probably not it would be a big blow if he was missing for big chunks of the league.
It definitely would, in fairness, and there was a lot leading up to the league for Donegal, and if he was to miss that first game against Cork, which was hotly anticipated as Jim McGuinness' first outing in the Alliance League since his departure, that's going to be a big loss to Donegal on the sideline. I don't know about this rule law, what the wording of it is. I think he might be available in the dressing room for Donegal to give it. I'm not sure what this is. It's early days in this news story now, but he might be available in the dressing room to give a post-match talk or a pre-match talk or whatever, but he won't be available on the sideline to roar instructions. And maybe that's a loss in itself, in fairness, but for Finbar Rorty, I do think it's a bit of a joke for rule. If he is banned, obviously he can't play minor now, he's 18 years of age, and minor, the cut-off point is under 17, so he wasn't going to play that anyway, in any case, shape or form. But to ban him from under 20, though, if that is the case, would be harsh. Really harsh, in fairness. But actually, Scorpio brought up a point. I'm not sure. This is a completely different sport now. The FA Cup at the weekend. I'm not sure. Did you see the FA Cup highlights at the weekend? But there was a 15-year-old playing for Blackburn Rovers, who's coincidentally Irish. He was playing at the weekend, I think, against Oxford. I don't know who it was in the FA Cup. I can't remember really. But that's a 15-year-old playing, and he was allowed to play in that FA Cup game. Whereas Finbar Rorty, who was 17 at the time, wasn't allowed to play a pre-season game. Whereas the FA Cup is a competitive competition, which is very important for the likes of Blackburn Rovers, the championship team. So I think when you look at it from that point of view, the rule is a bit ridiculous when you think about it. But at the same time, if Jim McGuinness broke the rules, he broke the rules. And that's the way it is. But in fairness, when you look at it from the point of view, from an English Football League point of view, I think the rule in the GAA might be a bit too harsh.
Yeah, I think so. At the end of the day, if you're good enough for it, like if your manager thinks you're good enough to be out there and playing, then then that's it, really, isn't it? And I suppose the same rule probably applies in football, like you said, in the FA Cup, like with many players down the years. If you're good enough, you're old enough. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's certainly an interesting point. Certainly one we'll keep an eye on. Any other preseason results that stood out? I know, as you said, like the preseason, I'm kind of similar with the preseason competitions. I don't mind watching the Dublin games because it's nice to see sort of under 20 players and younger players that you usually get to see later in the year. Like we beat Offaly 11 points to 10, trailing for majority of the game, 6 points to 2 down at half time, but managed to turn around in the second half. Brian O'Leary was very impressive with 4 points. Keane Dunn with 2 points. A couple of the substitutes made an impact late on as well, including Shane O'Leary. But any other preseason results stand out for you?
Probably from a Cork point of view, beating Clare last week 2-14 to 8 points, and maybe not so from the Cork point of view. Actually, Mark Fitzgerald's interview with Tommy Rooney from Off the Ball, I'm not sure to see this, Aaron. 11 Clare players have left the panel this year, and being in Division 3, losing Colm Collins as well, that's a big loss to Clare football. And even look at the names of the Clare footballers that have left the panel, and it's an extensive list when you think about it. Owen Cleary, probably Clare's best playmaking forward. Keelan Sexton, Clare's best performing forward last year with some brilliant scores within the top 10 scores from playing the entire All-Ireland Football Championship. So that's a huge loss. Jamie Malone scored that winning point against Roscommon years ago. Keane O'Dea, Pierce Lillis, and Gavin Cooley. All them 6 players are going travelling or personal reasons have denied them playing. And then 5 players on top of that have retired. Kieran Russell, Darren O'Neill, Owen Collins, Podge Collins, and Cathal O'Connor. So that's 2 midfielders, Cathal O'Connor and Darren O'Neill. That's huge losses for Clare. Huge. And when you consider they lost Gary Brennan a few years ago as well, it's not a good time to manage Clare when you think Mark Fitzgerald, I feel so sorry for that, coming into the job in Clare and losing them sorts of players. He has to kind of rebuild now in Division 3. And it's going to be tough in Division 3. Westmeath Down are going to be tough teams in there, and it's going to be a tough gig for Clare indeed. But the other side of the coin with Cork, Tommy Rooney was actually mentioning a point that Kerry fans don't need to hear anymore. Cork or football is back, and he's really excited about the Cork team at the moment. And with the Castlehaven lads missing, it was a good performance. Mark Cronin scored 1-3 from Nemo Rangers. Obviously, he's been knocking in the door for years, and he probably has to put in performances right about now. And he did so in fairness the other night, albeit it was pre-season. Conor Corbett's another one. Blake Murphy's come into the team. Luke Fahey's come back from injury. Rory Dean's come in as well. Even though he got a bit of a niggle in this game as well. Patrick Doyle, in fairness, had a good game and goal in replacing Micheál Martin. Like the Castlehaven boys are having a rest. So there's a lot of excitement about Cork this year, and very good to see it, in fairness. Obviously, the first league game against Donegal is going to be a really, really tough game. Jim McGuinness is on the sideline, or hot. But yeah, I'm excited. Like any other Cork fan, and like Tommy Rooney, I'm very excited about the Cork team in this season. And another few results. Kerry scoring 6 goals against Limerick was insane. Sean O'Shea, I think, scored 2 in 1 minute or something like that, which was absolutely incredible. I don't know to see this over the weekend. An own point from a Limerick player. That was a bit unusual.
We've seen a lot more of that. We've seen a lot more of them now recently. Remember, we've seen an own goal in the Taoiseach Cup final. Definitely a few ones in club championships as well. It does seem to be happening a bit more now.
Yeah, look, own points is a bit obscure when you think about it, because players have to put it over the bar. I know 2 happened in recent, obviously the one in Kerry Limerick over the weekend, and the one, I think Cork and Limerick played the league last year, and Daniel O'Mahony was intercepting a ball and he knocked it over his own bar. I think that was the only 2 that were own points in the last few years. I think I was hearing a Roscommon club game or something that this happened before. I think it happened with, I don't know, someone involved in the road in the Laois Championship, I think. An own point happened in the hurling. I don't know what it was, but it does seem to be happening a lot more. I don't know what it is, more deflections or whatever, but yeah, it's quite something to think about, in fairness. And even some results in the O'Byrne Cup and stuff that happened in the O'Byrne Cup. What happened with Wexford and Wicklow was really, really poor. Game being taken place at 8:30 in the evening, when Wicklow players in particular, had to go work in the morning. And yeah, I don't think the vibes will be good in the office in the morning. I think there'll be a lot of coffee being drunk, to be fair. But yeah, it was an awful situation really for both sets of players to travel from Wexford Park to Ferns, which was a half an hour drive. It was a bit farcical in its own right, and yeah, the GA need to do better when it comes to that. And even a few postponements on games. I think Cork and Limerick was postponed, and from Westmeath, the hurling was postponed. I think Kilkenny Carlow was the other game being postponed, and the Galway Offaly game. Obviously, how could you play hurling in that? Seriously, it was literally players couldn't see. And actually, hurling's more dangerous than Gaelic football, because the sliotar is a lot harder than Gaelic football, and it's smaller. It's really, really dangerous. So I don't know why the Leinster Council decided to go on with this game. Thankfully, in the end, they made the right decision, abandoned the game at 55 minutes and gave the win to Galway. Right decision, absolutely right decision in that extent. But yeah, some stories popping up in the pre-season competitions, but ultimately you watch them and you think, is there any real point of it? And as regards to the Dublin game, actually Ryan Basquet retiring was probably the big story coming out of the Dublin Offaly game. David Byrne taking a year out, and the Three Musketeers themselves, they're back for another chapter in the Dublin fairy tale arm.
Yeah, they are. There's yeah, I think the motivation is to win 10. I think that's the goal. And I think maybe they were offended by everyone saying that last year was the last dance and everything else. I think maybe they want to prove another point, and Yeah, like I think it's going to be a very interesting season from a Dublin perspective. Like Cluxton should be back for the championship. We should see the likes of McCarthy and Dean Rock, make appearances here and there in the league. Obviously, missing Davy Byrne, I think is going to be a huge miss. But I think it does open the door for someone like a Theo Clancy maybe to get a chance with this Dublin team, especially with Kilmacud Crokes now out in the semi-finals. It does leave maybe an opportunity for him to potentially feature against Monaghan in a couple of weeks' time, or maybe a little bit beyond that, considering he's obviously had a very busy club championship season. Comments coming in here from Daniel, who says, "What is your feeling on Jim McGuinness's 8-week ban? Seems very, very harsh." Yeah, as I was saying earlier, like I think it is very, very harsh. And to be honest, I would expect that to be appealed and probably thrown out. Like it just feels like it's one of them age-old rules that we have in the GAA a lot of the time. It's almost like a lot of the time there's rules in there that haven't been updated, and then someone goes and breaks it, and then it's like, oh yeah, we have this rule, we better update this because this rule is from donkey's years old. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, it does in fairness, and it's almost like the GAA don't kind of change their ways with these rules either, and they want to be just even with the soccer rule with the FA Cup and Blackburn Rovers, like it's almost like the GAA want to be different to other sports, and maybe you need to make a leaf out of other sports book in many ways. And yeah, as you mentioned there, if you're good enough, you're old enough, but yeah, it's a really obscure rule in its own right, and even the fact that the guy is now currently 18 years of age and he played one
Yeah,
game.
it was a few days before he turned 18 as well. Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous.
It is, and the fact is they were playing an Armagh team that was full of development players. So maybe they had. I'm not sure the Armagh team, maybe the under-20s only were involved in that, but they were playing an Armagh team. There was a second team more or less. Why are the GAA actually taking this seriously? Like, I think this should be like it probably goes against the ethos of the preseason competitions, if there is an ethos whatsoever, to play up and coming young players and to try out new players. How are you going to try out new players if this rule is still there? So yeah, there's a lot of holes in this rule, and I'd expect Jim McGuinness to appeal to overturn this ban in fairness, but at the moment, if it stands. And I'd be more feeling sorry for Finbar Rorty rather than McGuinness. I feel sorry for an extent, but for the guy not to be banned for 2 weeks to play for Donegal his first senior appearance, I mean, it's almost like the stuff fairy tales, and then within days, it's almost like the stuff of nightmares. It's really, really poor.
Yeah, like and to be fair, at that age as well, you mightn't even know about a rule like that. Like you're just happy to play. Like so, yeah, it's a little bit bizarre, but who knows? It could build a bit of a siege mentality within Donegal. I'm sure Jim McGuinness will be absolutely loving that. In fairness, but yeah, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this one up here. Anyone who tuned in, hit the like button and subscribe. Be very much appreciated. Make sure to check out Matthew's podcast, the Gaelic Statsman, as well. There'll be Donegal and Dublin previews out this week at different stages as well. So if you want to hear more chat about Donegal, we have pre-recorded it already, so there won't be any chat about the Jim McGuinness ban, unfortunately. But yeah, the Dublin preview should be live at some point later in the week. So yeah, cheers anyone who tuned in, and we'll speak to you soon.